Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to March Mystery Madness. This is a venerable BookTube event designed to celebrate murder mysteries. It takes place all throughout March. I read murder mysteries all year long, but I take special joy in doing it during the month of March. And since March Mystery Madness is 9 years old in 2024, one of the prompts, if you want to follow prompts, is to read the ninth book in a series. And that's what I've been doing exclusively. I haven't done any of the other prompts. I've just done that. With mixed results. And today, last night, it was a reread. I reread the ninth book in a series. Hadn't read it in forever and ever, so there was a lot that was new to me. Last night epitomizes, the book I want to talk about today epitomizes the on and off results that I've had by doing that, my own version of that gimmick. Because I went for comfort food last night. I've been disappointed my last few ninth books in series. So I went for comfort food last night, The Inspector Morse Mysteries by Colin Dexter, which are utterly delightful. They're just, I think I was driven to them. They're just classic tweed and gumshoe British police procedural mysteries. And I think I was driven to that in part by reading another Freeman Wills Croft novel just a couple of days ago that was the same thing on paper, on Blueprint. It was the same thing. A dogged British detective putting together quotidian clues in order to solve a murder mystery. But the Freeman Wills Croft book was so unbelievably boring. It did all of those things, but it did them without any life at all. I think maybe that's partly why I went to Inspector Morse, to see that done well. And the ninth book in the series is the jewel that was ours. So I reread this, and it is the story of basically two murders at Oxford. One is a woman who has a medieval artifact that she is telling all and sundry. She is very, very vocal about the fact that she intends to donate it to Oxford's museum. And the other is the academic who wants to receive it and who has been telling everyone and sundry that he's very grateful, very happy to get this thing and its provenance and its importance and whatnot. And she ends up dead and he ends up dead. And this draws Inspector Morse and his faithful Lewis, his police sidekick, to the scene of the crime. It draws them to Oxford to figure out what's going on. And they set about doing that. You talk to everybody. Somebody rubs you the wrong way. You start to think they're probably the victim. They're probably the killer. They're probably in on it. They probably know more. You start to spot inconsistencies in stories. Are the inconsistencies in stories harmless the way they would be if you or I told a complicated story from foggy memory? Or are they sinister? They start to verify alibis. A huge, huge part of British police procedural murder mysteries is the verification of alibis. When you read enough of these things, you start to realize that's what you're in for. You're in for detectives going back to records offices and checking whether or not the ferry at 8:30 was delayed by rain or fog by 10 minutes. You want to verify whether or not that was true, because that would affect the ticket slip that was stamped, and maybe the stamp is a little blurry, and maybe the ticket stamper was not the usual guy and it was someone else, and maybe we should look at that someone else. It is, eerily enough, it is the kind of work that police detectives do. And I've never known a police detective here in Boston who didn't say over beer at the bar, who didn't say, it amazes me that anybody would want to read about this crap. This is my job. It's not interesting. I've never met one of them that thought that what they do was interesting. And yet there's this whole subgenre of mystery that's entirely devoted to what they do, to checking receipts against timetables and closing time, and was there a power outage at the restaurant that night, and how will I know that? Yeah, go and talk with the power outage guy, and then talk with the power outage guy's superior in case the power outage guy is wrong or is in on it. So Morris and Lewis go about the work of checking on all of these things, on every little detail. Train schedules endlessly. Oh my God. Where would a British police procedural be without train schedules? I know the British have an unhealthy obsession with trains anyway, but still. So you would think the minute I started to encounter that sort of stuff, I'd be having traumatic flashbacks to that Freeman Wills Croft book. But no, this is what it's like when it's done well. This is what it's like when the prose snaps, when it sits up, when it isn't expecting you to just wade in, that it isn't expecting that it has your attention. Of course it's not. I don't care if you pile the dead bodies in bathtubs or closets or whatever all the way to the ceiling. They don't generate interest. Dead bodies don't generate interest except if the reader is a small child. I need the prose to generate my interest, and this does. Absolutely does. I think I've read all the Inspector Morse novels. I don't think I've read any that where I just there have been some books in long series, even by my beloved Donna Leone, where I finish it and say, all right, well, that was largely nothing. And I get the sense that you knew that you had a contract to fulfill. And so you worked up the most substantial tiny piece of gristle that you had into something like a book. But that was mostly nothing. I don't think I've ever had that experience with Colin Dexter, with the Inspector Morse novels. I just love them all. This was a perfect antidote to Freeman Wills Croft. This was a perfect antidote because it was exactly the same kind of thing, only done well. So that now I know it's not the thing that's at fault. It's the author that's at fault. I should have known that anyway. It is always, always, always the author who is at fault. So you might think that, okay, all right, fine. So you did go in with your hackles up, but here you see it done right, so all is well. But not really. I'm sorry, this is taking all sorts of psychodramatic turns, but not really. No, because I finished this. Morse figures out the killer. He does it in the 9th hour. It is on paper anyway, nominally a clever way that he does it. That he figures out specifically how one character has lied to him. It's nominally clever the way he does that. I'm not taking anything away from that. I couldn't have thought it up. But that's all it is nominally clever. And then everybody just sort of, well, I guess that wraps that up. So when I was grateful the whole time I was reading it because it wasn't the Freeman Wills Croft. It wasn't dead on the page at all. It wasn't just minutia presented for the sake of minutia. What was I saying? Oh, right. It wasn't any of that, and it did have snap. These are wonderful books. Don't get me wrong. Don't get this review wrong. But when I was done with it, I set it down. I read it on the big Kindle, and I set it down and I sighed contentedly, and then I did what I always do when I immediately finish a book. I do a little bit of jujitsu. So I set even if it's a reread, and the more I read this, the more I remembered it. When I set a book down that I've just read, I do a little bit of mental jujitsu. I set it down, and then I do something else for 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe answer a block of emails, or I don't know, yell at my surly houseboy to fold some clothes or something like that. And then after a very short time, not a day, not an hour, just a few minutes, then I go back and think about it, the whole of it. Oh, so I've let the momentary afterglow of finishing something fade, and now I'm sitting back and thinking about it. And when I did that, I realized that a large part of that sigh of contentment was the fact that this was better than one of the most boring books I've ever read, which is not good. That is not a good yardstick. Sorry, that's going to keep happening. I can hear the next barrage. This is now 20 emergency vehicles. They've all got police escorts. There is no emergency. But if, God forbid, there is an emergency on the other side of town, there are no emergency vehicles to answer it. But it spices up a boring Sunday or Saturday, so I guess. But anyway, and also it's time and a half all weekend long here in Boston. But anyway, we're just going to ignore the background noise because it's going to keep going. When they do a pylon like this, everybody comes. They come from Rhode Island to do this. So we're just going to ignore the background noise. When I was finished, when I came back, when I did that mental jujitsu and came back, I realized that it's much better done. It's not boring. It snaps. It's interesting. The dialogue is terrific. The descriptions are terrific. And I don't go on too long. But when the afterglow had faded, when I realized that I had not been Freeman Wills Crofted yet again, I realized that this was just sort of ordinary. It isn't anywhere near as good as a whole bunch of other Colin Dexter novels that I've read. A whole bunch of other Inspector Morse novels that I've read are better than this. It had a little glow to it because it was not a disaster. No author wants that. No author wants that kind of praise. And it wasn't just not a disaster. It was really good. It just, it wasn't, the book itself was not anything exceptional. So I am at least continuing that these books are just not exceptional. The way I'm finishing out March Mystery Madness this year is not exceptional. So far, I've got one more try. I've got one more bite at the apple. I'll throw something on the reading list for tonight, and we will finish up March Mystery Madness tomorrow. But I want to give you my report today. It's The Jewel That Was Ours. It's quite good. In less experienced hands, I could easily see the number of places where this would have been derailed. One of them would have been the endless amounts of info dumping about the actual object, the medieval object in question. That could have been an info dump of nightmarish proportions, and instead it's not. Also, the key thing here that I'm paying attention to for 9th books in series is how good the author does a job of welcoming new readers. This does a fine job of that. You will not feel put off at all. But this was just average, and it's starting to make me wonder, considering all the 9th books in series that I've been reading and just having the same reaction to, I'm starting to wonder if maybe 9 is too many for a murder mystery series no matter what. Is it just that no matter what, an author is just not going to have the old pep in their step, the old vim and vigor? Do any of you actually know of a murder mystery that is at number 9 completely vigorous, completely spry, and not just, I don't want to say that this thing just shows up and punches a time clock. It's better than that, but it's not much better than that. Do any of you know of examples that I'm just not thinking of? I'm starting to stay away from the big name authors that I love with delirious eyes anyway, no matter what. I'm trying to stay away from them to keep my mind clear. We'll see. We'll see what I find for tonight to finish up March Mystery Madness. It'll be fun either way. This has been a fun event, even though I've been a little wayward as a host. But for now, I'm going to wrap this up. That was Colin Dexter. That was Inspector Morse. And I will return tomorrow with my last pick of March Mystery Madness. So I'll see you all then. Thank you, BookTube.